Chief Market Analyst at Scope Markets, Joshua Mahony, joins me now. Always good to see you, Josh. Let's start with the US shutdown. What's been the impact of this stalemate on the markets these long weeks?
I mean, it's an interesting one because I would actually say it's not had a huge impact. I mean, of course, we know there's been volatility and some downside for stocks, but that's just been a recent affair. Of course, this has now rolled on for 40 days. And prior to today's rebound, in actual fact, you compare, say, the Nasdaq where it is on Friday compared to where it was at the beginning of the shutdown, and it was higher anyway. I think for the most part, markets are willing to look beyond these events now, because if you've been trading or investing long enough, you would have seen it in the past. And generally, once you see an end to the shutdown, markets perform very well from there on in. Probably the big benefactor really was gold in the first couple of weeks that we saw after that shutdown started. We saw a massive rally up to that 4,400 peak. Of course, it's come back a bit since, but really this was a sort of indication of the sort of breakdown within Washington that is part of the reason why many people like to move their money into assets such as gold.
OK, we'll have to see if the rally holds. Let's talk about the China-US trade truce. Investors like it, but what does it really mean for the markets and for American farmers?
Well, I mean, it's definitely good news because it's just one of the major risks that's off the table. From the perspective of the markets, of course, we had the big sort of looming 100% tariffs over our heads, and that, of course, raised the possibility of a rampant rise in terms of inflation. Suddenly the Federal Reserve's pathway lower becomes very murky indeed. That data-dependent approach means they pretty much would have to stop cutting rates. So that's off the table. We see a reduction in terms of tariffs. The farmers and in the agricultural sector finally get some of their soybeans sent over. But I would, with my sceptical approach, probably say that the deal that Trump's got is pretty much akin to what was in place under Joe Biden anyway. I mean, he's just getting rare earth minerals and he's getting purchases of agricultural goods, both of which were in play when he first entered the White House earlier in the year.
That's interesting. Listen, I can't remember if you're a Guinness kind of guy or, you know, a Bailey's drinker, but you've probably been looking at the Diageo story. They've appointed Tesco's turnaround guy, Drastic Dave, as some call him, as CEO. He's got quite a pedigree in building brands. What's the story at Diageo, and why do the markets like this hire?
Well, funnily enough, I'm a Guinness guy, right? And Guinness is probably the one sort of story of strength within Diageo, so much so that some people say they should spin it off as its own entity. I think if you look at the pubs nowadays, young people don't really go to the pub so much, whether it's the price of it or just a different outlook in terms of drinking alcohol. But certainly the stock's been suffering in part because revenues have pretty much been flat over the years, earnings sort of drifting lower. So they really have stopped growing. That means earnings per share, price to earnings ratio actually gets into territory that many see as being attractive, but it's the ability to turn them around that suddenly sees Dave Lewis's entry into the role as particularly interesting. Previously at Unilever, where he drastically cut the amount of products that they had. I think it was from 1,600 to 400. So a massive cut on that front. Suddenly you see a massive reduction in terms of costs and improvements in terms of profitability. Then he went to Tesco's and we saw a massive turnaround following the horse meat scandal. Since then, he's not actually had a CEO role since 2020, so they've managed to bring him back into the fold. This is a massive coup for the company. And for many looking at that price to earnings ratio, they might think this could be a great time to be able to jump into this stock that has a huge number of big name spirits and alcoholic drinks and 0% Guinness for that matter under its wings. So yeah, really interesting story in the UK space at the moment.
I'll drink to that. Josh Mahony, great to speak to you again. Josh Mahony at Scope Markets.